Hi, Abe. Hey, Wynne.
Hi, Vicki. Hi, Wynne. It's nice to see you both again.
So nice to see you. We've had such a wonderful warm up chat. Just it's so nice to be with Abe, our friend from the north.
Absolutely, right. And this is tour number two, back by popular demand.
hmm
Wynne and I love a good cliffhanger. Oh, don't we? We do. But we've been trying to coordinate with you, Abe, for a few weeks. Everyone is so busy, but we're so grateful that you were able to make time for us today because it wasn't that long ago that we podcasted with you and we left some stuff on the table that we didn't get to talk about. And
hmm
this episode, we're calling it Finding Our People,
hmm
and we're glad you're one of our people,
hmm
dear friend. So glad. But it wasn't that long ago that you wrote, Abe, about, a beautiful trip, that you took with your family. And as we talked about it in the last podcast, we knew it was going to be a conversation unto its own, talking about this beautiful experience. And I think the serendipity that happens sometimes when we're in the world. And I'll just say right now for myself, I'm feeling more cautious about people because of where we are in the world. And, I'll just say heavy election news, for some of us in the US. But it's still within us to try and look for the good, see the good. And you have such a rich and wonderful story about kind of leaning into kindness and when it's before you, really greeting it and bringing it in, and then sharing, with your friends like us through story, the power of being open and perhaps not always being so guarded that other people really do want to connect with us around topics that may make us vulnerable at times, but it's that meeting in the middle that there's such richness. So, with that as like a heavy intro, tell us the story that we didn't have time for before.
Sure. So earlier this summer, my family we kicked off the summer. So my spouse, our 9-year-old son, and we went to Banff, which is in the
hmm
western part of Canada. It's been on our bucket list to go on forever, and I'm glad we waited to go with our son because our son, it was just one of the most beautiful trips that we had. Any of you, especially now with what's going on in the world in the US,
Yes.
if you're
Yeah.
looking to move, Banff is a wonderful place, beautiful nature.
On our way,
So,
right? Lynn and I are coming.
hmm
Yeah. Hmm.
on our very last day in Banff, what we just kept the day wide open. We said we're not going to heavily plan the day. The rest of the trip was planned. There was an itinerary, but we left it as a blank slate. And what we ended up doing on this day was we visited a park called Yoho National Park. It was one of the recommended places, and there was a specific park in the uh, park called Emerald Lake. This beautiful, out of this world turquoise water. And I was so excited because we ended up getting to canoe because I wanted to do the canoeing at another lake. It's more busy, touristy, called Moraine Lake, but Emerald Lake, less touristy. And then we ended up lining up for the canoe ride. And it was a 1 hour wait because it was still a long wait. And so during the lineup, there was another couple in front of us from Florida, and then my son, T. So in the previous podcast, I shared that he has a disability called fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And so one of the symptoms that manifests is he's very hyper, can't sit still, can't regulate his emotions. So, this woman kind of picked up on what was going on. And so she said to me, and my spouse, so she just asked out of the blue, is your son adopted? And so I said, as I usually do when someone asks me, I say in a joking way, I'm like, you can't see the resemblance between the two of us. This clearly tanned Asian man and this pasty white Caucasian child with blue eyes. You don't think we're biological? So that kind of broke the ice. And so we started talking about where does she come from? So she's traveling from Florida And the first thing she started talking about was, she was a Ron DeSantis fan. I was like, uh-oh, this is gonna go. But we ended up having a very pleasant conversation. And she told me that the reason she asked was because she had a son who was also gay, and he was hoping to start a family.
Mm.
And then the husband quickly chirped in saying, well, first we got to find a partner first. So,
All those
so
practicalities.
yeah. But it ended up being a nice conversation because my spouse and I, mainly me, because I tend to be chatty, we ended up talking about our adoption process, how long it took. It was 7 years. And then she ended up, through that conversation, also saying that two of her sons were also adopted. And then she started going on about how, one of them also had was exposed to substances in the womb. She didn't go into too much detail, but then they started talking about some of the challenges they had as the child was being raised in adolescence. And I'm like, oh, there's a lot of similar kind of things with what we're dealing with. So although she didn't quite say that her child had the same disability as my son, I just made some inferences. At the end of the day, what was, I thought, so wonderful about this random connection was, wow, I'm someone from Toronto, flew 4 hours to Banff, someone from Florida, and yet randomly brought together in a line, and we just found each other. And that was a really fun moment. And then, of course, the hour came. She hopped on her canoe, went on her way to these beautiful mountains. And then we went on a canoe and we never saw her again. Right. So, but it was, something that just really stuck with me because I was having a really hard time at that line with my son's behavior. And just seeing her and hearing her story just kind of helped me calm down, right? Because usually I get so self-conscious about my son's behavior in public, and it just made me feel, wow, this woman came at the right time.
Yeah. And what I love about that is the opening up back and forth. You share a detail, she shares a detail. It's that willingness to move on past those assumptions that allows us to open up.
Yeah. And I think also it is hard sometimes when people, sometimes in public, ask ridiculous questions when they're observing us, our family, the interaction, all of that. And it's easy, especially, when you're struggling a little bit, you're trying to make it a good moment, for the three of you. An hour is a long time to wait in line, right? So you've already got that tension. But what I love about what you did is that your reply to her with her fairly, forward question, really, but it happens. People provide commentary all the time when we're out in the wild. You could have given her so many other things, but what you gave her was heart and humor in response, which to Wynn's point, I think makes it possible then to do that volleying, that like, well, let me disclose a little and then I'll tell you a little bit more. But that's such a beautiful thing about you.
Well, thanks for sharing that. When I was reflecting on sort of this story to share today, I came across an interesting quote online from a podcaster I like. I listen to very few podcasts, one of them is yours, but it's Mel Robbins. And she said, people come in your life for a reason, for a season, or for a lifetime. And obviously this woman came for a specific reason. And I think my general approach, and definitely I'm so mindful of this because that time that we're recording this right now is the same week as the US elections, is just how important it is to be just open with each other, right? And in community, regardless of how long that interaction is going to last. And my general approach is similar to however in the conversation right now is if someone just opens themselves to me, it's so easy to make assumptions, and it's usually a negative assumption, right? It's like, why is she asking me? But when we kind of lean into the moment with an open heart, we often surprise ourselves with where that takes us. And I'm really glad that interaction with that family reinforced that belief I have.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because, you talk about reasons, seasons, or a lifetime, but we're talking sort of broadly about building community, finding people, And sort of what you've illustrated is that part of that building a community, it might be just temporary.
Hmm.
It just might be a moment of empathy, of kindness.
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be, we're not on this mission. I've got to find my people and then I'm only going to see my people, right?
Yeah.
It's openness, as you said.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
I
I
also, I think it also speaks to knowing when you can reject people for a season,
Mm,
a reason, or a lifetime, and right, cultivating who you
mm.
want. Sorry, Abe.
oh, no, no, no. Please go
No,
ahead.
no, no. I think I started to talk over you, but I think it's also about like who you let in. So it's about
Hmm.
being courageous and vulnerable, but also once you've done that, it's okay to shut a door and say, well, yeah, that was the reason or the season, or, I'm done now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure. It made me think about my mom recently as
Mm-hmm.
well around
Mm,
sort of opening doors.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier this year, I was really lucky to attend a talk that was given by a founder of a social connection movement called Genwell.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something that he spoke about that really, really resonated with me, which was around the growing loneliness epidemic
mhm.
and how
Yeah.
human connection is the antidote. So I had to write this down because I didn't want to misquote this, but he was talking about how in 2023, the US Surgeon General's issued a report. It was an advisory report on the healing effects of social connection and community.
Mm,
And the report found that loneliness is far more than just a bad feeling. It harms both the individual and societal health. It's associated with a greater risk of cardiovascular disease,
mm,
dementia, stroke, depression, anxiety, and even premature death.
mhm,
And this is where this just knocked me over. The mortality impact of being socially disconnected is similar to that caused by smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day.
mm,
So, when I was really thinking about this and really just your thought right now, Vicki, around opening doors, I thought about
Mm-hmm.
my mom. In 2009, my dad passed away, and my mom was in her 70s. And as part of her grieving process, she and a few groups of friends, they formed a seniors group.
mm,
So it started off as a really small group,
mm,
but then
Mm-hmm.
every Thursday, you go to the local mall. You could find this group of seniors in the food court right by the Tim Hortons. So Tim Hortons is kind of like, I guess, the equivalent of Dunkin' Donuts
Oh,
in
yeah.
the US. So
Yeah.
they just would
mhm,
spend every Thursday there commiserating. And soon this group of
Oh.
four became this large group. They even had a
mm,
centenarian at one
mm.
point.
Wow.
And my mom, joked she was the youngest one in the group. So when I really kind of think of community and finding our
Mhm,
people, I really think back to that story and
mhm,
Yeah.
how that is how we kind of get through
mhm, mhm.
get through life, whether
Right.
we're feeling anxiety or
Definitely.
commiserating about what happened in the world earlier
Mm-hmm.
this week.
Mm-hmm.
It's that antidote to
Mhm,
Yeah.
these negative feelings and
mhm.
isolation. It's
Right.
human connection, and you do that by having an open heart and reaching out to people in the community and finding your
Mhm,
people.
mhm.
Right. Oh my
I
gosh.
think one of the maxims that I've heard, especially recently this week, don't worry alone. And
Mm-hmm.
just applying it to this story about the Florida couple. I mean, you were feeling that worry of, oh, we got an hour. I've got,
Yeah.
how's T going to do this? I mean, it's just, I felt the same, having my two kids like, oh my gosh, are we going to just, irritate everybody around us? And you got that moment of, connection and conversation with this woman, and it changed it so that it changed the worry. You saw that you were seen. I mean, it was just the perfect antidote, as you said, to
Yeah.
worrying alone about being in the line for an hour. I mean, so these
Yeah.
worries don't have to be big worries that we can connect it with other people over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that remembering that consideration and kindness and humanity and that other people aren't a threat, that they're,
Hmm.
not going to judge, but that you can make, as Abe said, kind of a meaningful connection that may not be lasting. Like you said, they got in their canoe, you guys got in your canoe. I mean, how symbolic is that, right? And you paddled off to destinations, unknown. But I bet she will remember the conversation with you
Mhm.
for a very long time. I think it was probably, I mean, I get chills as I think that, because I think it was probably every bit as impactful for her and
Mhm.
encouraging for her, in the same way that it was for you. That little shot of like confidence that, I'm doing okay. And goodness knows, as parents, right, there are days when I mean,
Mm.
you would take any of those booster shots you could get from anywhere. Am I
Yeah.
right? Oh, so
Oh,
good.
yeah, no, I will, speaking for myself, certainly remember that conversation and that moment of
Mhm.
kindness.
Mhm.
And I
Hmm.
think you bring up a really good point, right? Human connection facilitates kindness because usually sometimes we're at the prison of our own thoughts. And then
Mhm.
if we're isolated,
Right.
these negative thoughts, these assumptions
Yeah.
start manifesting. And really,
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
best way to bring communities together is to reach out. It does
Hmm.
take an act of bravery. It does
Mhm.
require you to
Yeah.
be
Mhm.
open to
Yeah.
failure and rejection. But what
Right.
I do find most times is reaching out, hearing someone out, getting a chance to voice your truth.
Mhm.
I think
Hmm.
that helps build empathy and
Yeah.
Mhm.
compassion. We did a project many years ago, 2009, for the organization I worked for, where we hosted a human library.
Mhm.
And so the idea was, this is an idea that originated from Copenhagen, because at the time there was a lot of violence amongst the youth there.
Mhm.
And they thought by bringing people together who normally wouldn't have a chance to interact, they could
Ooh.
learn more about people and find that there's actually more that are similar amongst these
Mhm.
communities rather than
Yeah.
different. So for the event that we did, we had people, who experienced homelessness, people who were, part of the 2S LGBTQ plus community, people who
Hmm.
fought in the war. And it
Mhm.
Hmm.
was just really nice to bring people together. And you find, you know what?
Yeah.
There's usually a lot more
Mhm.
in common with each other than not. And that's, I think, where empathy
Yeah.
happens, where
Mhm.
compassion happens, where kindness happens.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that really is, I think, especially during these troubling times that we're in,
Yep.
Hmm.
that is the antidote. Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I know certainly for myself, that woman and all the different times when I've had found, you know what, I'm actually not alone in this.
Right.
Mhm.
That gives me the strength to go on as a
Yeah.
parent and as an
Mhm.
individual in society.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. And I think what I really appreciate about it is, doing that from the library's perspective, is that sometimes people have it in their heart, to be a little bit of a risk taker that way, but creating an event where people can come and there's a little bit of safety because I'm with other people, I can leave if I need to, but
Mhm.
somehow creating that the venue and I know libraries, I mean, we can't say enough about all the good that, libraries do, librarians, everyone associated, because for a lot of people, that is the community hub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true.
Wow.
And we keep
Wow.
on coming full circle to kindness as under, I mean, we're talking about community, but that's both, it's sort of part and parcel, right?
Hmm.
We're going to community to find our support. That support is an act of kindness. These
Yeah.
things don't have to be big.
Hmm.
It doesn't have to
Right.
be big at all. Earlier this week on Monday, our local school board, they hosted their very first town hall.
Mm-hmm.
They have a subcommittee called the Special Education Advisory Committee, and they
Hmm.
wanted to host a town hall for parents and caregivers to voice their concerns and their suggestions for the board. So they were like flooded with participants. They actually had to divide the people who signed up into three groups, just so that everyone had a chance to speak.
Nice.
And for my group, coincidentally, I was the one first called to speak. I was like so terrified. And it's a
Oh,
virtual meeting, right? So,
yeah.
oftentimes people don't have their cameras on.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
what was really nice about this was we all got 5 minutes to speak. When I was speaking, I would say about 70% of the people had their cameras on. They were
Mm-hmm.
just nodding along. And I think that gentle encouragement, even
Yeah.
though I didn't know any of these people,
Hmm.
really I thought was like a huge act of kindness. And then
Mhm.
vice versa, as other
Yeah.
people spoke, I was like, I was originally just because we're very busy, just going to hop off after the call. But I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
We all need to be there for each other. And we all
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
stayed. Everyone, no one hopped off the call.
Oh,
Everyone stayed,
wow.
sat there and were there
Wow.
to silently cheer each other on as they
Mhm.
deputed. And like to your point, Wynn and Vicky,
Yeah.
like the things that we do to support each other, even strangers, it
Mhm.
Yeah.
doesn't have to be big. It's as simple as just being there and giving them
Yeah.
Mhm.
gentle encouragement as they're speaking their truth, right, and advocating
Mhm.
Right.
for change.
Right.
Wow.
Well, that's a powerful story. I love the stories that you come with. It's
They're
so
so good.
they're just they're living examples of all the things that we think about in principle. But
Mhm.
they're like, this is how we can do it every day.
Yeah. Well, and
Mhm.
I love that this last example that you shared, Abe, because it's a reminder, and we love debunking this myth because, we're part of a WordPress community. Bloggers care about each other. We do develop, deep friendships with people. But I think what you just described is that being thoughtful about the use of technology and building community and the subtleties of, I may not be physically with you, but I'm going to engage you with eye contact. I'm still going to give you the best of what I have right
Mhm.
now, my full attention, and give that to you. And I think you've mentioned that that's at its base kind of a civility thing too, about
Mhm.
being respectful whether you're in person or online. It matters, right? But do
Mhm.
you have any other tips or suggestions for people about how to do that so well? Because you've done it beautifully.
I take inspiration from both of you, like this community that you've built with Heart of Man. Because I go back and forth with technology, right? Like I feel like
Mm.
with modern technology, it's actually created this awful cesspool where people just they don't
Mhm.
talk, they just scream out loud next to
Gosh.
each other.
Right.
Mhm.
But then I'm reminded through things like the WordPress community and through the Heart of the Matter, technology can be used
Mhm.
for good. And when I think about technology, definitely utilizing that.
Hmm.
Just behave the way you would in an online world as
Mhm.
you would want to be treated
Yeah.
in person, right?
Mhm.
So I definitely think seeking out community in person and finding opportunities to do that is so important. And
Hmm.
also just not be complacent, right? Like I'm very
Okay.
lucky, speaking from my identity as a gay man, that, I live in a very safe city. But
Mhm.
I also make sure that every year, I work with my colleagues to march in the parade every year in
Mhm.
Toronto, the Pride Parade, because
Hmm.
not everyone is out. Not everyone comes from a place where they're accepted. People are
Yeah.
on different parts of the journey. So I
Mhm.
think
Yeah.
the other thing I would say is just show up for each other, even though you're
Yeah.
doing it for strangers. I
Yeah.
Mhm.
think I think I think
Mhm.
that's so important. Thinking about it as a caregiver for someone with special needs, I would say showing up for not just for my child, but for the entire community. That's so important. I'm very lucky that I'm part of a little parenting caregiver group. We meet
Mhm.
once every Wednesday during lunch, and just having their support makes me feel
Hmm.
that, okay, maybe this
Yeah.
crazy life I have is not so crazy, right? Like I actually feel like I'm
Mhm.
normal. So I would say if I could kind of boil it down to one point from your question, I would say is always reach out and connect,
Mm.
Yeah.
and avoid the temptation to just isolate yourself, because it's so easy to do that
Oh,
in the world that we're in, especially when
yeah.
there's forces that kind of push us in that
Mhm.
Yeah.
direction.
Mhm.
Absolutely. It's tempting, right? And people who know me well know when the going gets tough, if I don't actively push myself, I will withdraw when
Mhm.
things are not good and I will disappear. And so I've got a few knowing people that know to watch for that with me, but I will disconnect, disengage, disappear, right? And it's not the best thing to do on an individual level, but your point about the greater good, you might, in the anti-loneliness epidemic and finding
Mm-hmm.
purpose and feeling that sense of agency, you sometimes can't do that for yourself. You need even just, simple warmth and eye contact from strangers
Mm-hmm.
might lift you up.
Right.
Yeah. Oh,
Bottom
oh,
line, be a butterfly and not a turtle.
Yeah.
oh,
Yes.
oh.
Although a turtle shell would be nice for some days, or
Some days,
actually a tortoise shell. Actually,
yeah, and
yeah,
right, and maybe
Yeah.
it's not to say that there aren't days that you can just pull in a little bit.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Good
yeah.
point. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Well, we're recording this on a Friday, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
telling you, this is going to help me sail into the weekend
Mm-hmm.
and beyond. Very enriching and
Absolutely.
uplifting, you two. Oh,
Yeah, because we love this community and being in community with you, Abe, is wonderful.
I'm very thankful we all got to meet, like through this community, right? Because it actually, I say this wholeheartedly, right? Like just reading both your posts and the people within this community, it's
Mm-hmm.
my daily. I don't get to do it every day, but when I
Yeah.
do read
yeah.
and check in, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's therapy, it's
Mm-hmm.
kindness, it's connection, it's
Yeah.
compassion, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm very thankful for it. And we're gonna need
Oh,
it more than ever for the next while.
Right.
yeah.
Yes.
Seems that way. Well, right back at you. All of
Yes.
that. Right, Win? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Kindness and connection and really thoughtful and well spoken and wonderful advocates like you, Abe.
Yeah. And
And
finding our
likewise to you both.
people. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right.
All the best, you two.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.